Donald Campbell says, why are the Bonnie Prince and the Jacobites so romanticized? They were largely unsupported by the majority of the Highland clans, with some of them actually begging him to turn around and leave when he landed in Scotland. Funny, I think we talked about this in a video recently.
If only there was a video that we could insert over there somewhere. Not right now, but in post. That's fine.
If you haven't seen it, I would be very grateful if you consider watching it.
What's the title of it? Do you remember?
Jacobites.
The Cloth of the
The
Rebellion.
Cloth of the Rebellion.
Yes,
Or
indeed.
The Cloth of the Jacobites, something like that.
Yeah.
I get confused.
Ultimately we romanticize the underdogs or the losers or the people that had a cause that is either a heartfelt cause or a cause that you believe in as well, even though it's you're separated by time. So that's or someone who was crushed by a far superior enemy. That's the reason David and Goliath is such a strong story. So whether it's the Jacobites, whether it's the Irish against the English, whether it's the South and the U.S., whether it's Native Americans, all of these groups were underdogs in their own way, and that's why people romanticize it, because it's they sing songs about it. That's the reason why, is because you see a bit of yourself in it, and you always kind of you root for the little guy. You want the little guy to win, but it doesn't often happen. So I think that's the reason why we are naturally kind of drawn to underdog stories. Eric.
I would say that is the emotional undercurrent of it, for sure. That's the macro. To put on a more callous historical hat, I'll go this direction.
Damn you, callous historical hats.
Warts and all. First of all, let's start with the fact that not everybody in nobles is really hung up on Prince Charlie. In fact, even some people don't even want to call him the Bonnie Prince. They think that that's just too endearing. They just want to refer to him as, Prince Charles Edward Stuart. He has a mixed reputation modernly. Why was it him and why was it the Jacobites? Because, as one of my favorite Scottish presenters puts it, after Sir Walter Scott, we were all Highlanders now. This is about establishing national origin stories and nationalism as identity in the face of dealing with the poor politics, we'll put it, with the southern neighbor, okay? And you're not going to want to side with the clans or the lowlanders who were on the side of the Hanoverians, who were de facto the side of the crown located in London, if you are trying to build a story that instills pride in the people you're talking to. Enter Sir Walter Scott, and before him, the London Scottish Society, although I get their name wrong sometimes, so don't quote me on the exact name of the group. The nationalists, the new breed who came up in the late 18th century and all the way through the Regency period, who basically said, no, we've been a second-class citizen in this union for long enough. We need to reestablish Scottish pride. We need to develop an identity. And the best way to do that is to remember what was the most distinctive parts of our culture back in the day. And this led to a lot of romanticizing. It's led to fables being invented in some ways.
Or embellished.
I mean,
At least embellished.
Like the Oisin poem, those kinds of works of fiction came about as part of this also. But then you have the whole lost cause tragedy thing, and the fact that the culture of the Highlanders is so much more colorful and distinct than comparative other aspects of Scottish culture in the day. So that's where you get your cues to build something that feels distinct, unique, something you can be proud of, and you can point to other people and say, this is where we come from. So in that sense, the Bonnie Prince was, and for some people still is, propaganda. Okay? They knew what they were doing. I mean, when Sir Walter Scott talked about the Jacobites, wrote Waverley, and wrote Rob Roy, all these things. He knew what he was doing in terms of tapping into the emotions of the people and what they needed to hear, because it's what he wanted to hear. So that's where it comes from. That is, in a nutshell, that is why. I think there are other people in historical Scotland who I admire a lot more, frankly, personally. Your mileage may vary. Lord Murray, for one. Montrose, for another. William Wallace. All these guys get me going much more than the Bonnie Prince. So, yeah, in some ways it's kind of weird that he's the one that a lot of people point to. But again, his reputation is actually rather mixed, as opposed to the Jacobites as a whole, who are, very much the underdogs, the classic underdogs who made good and then became cannon fodder for the British Empire later. But that's a whole other rant on my part. So.
Yeah, and there's also the passage of time. So he wasn't romanticized, a few years later. He was romanticized, 50 years later. So it's one of those where it's you need that passage of time, and you need the threat, the imminent threat of the Highlanders potentially, invading England again, to be able to romanticize them. If they were still a threat, I don't think he would have been romanticized by Sir Walter Scott in the same way, but because the culture was damn near extinct, or it was being actively being tamped down for a period of time. It was like, okay, now it's time to bring it back. Now it's time to resuscitate it. There are still embers here. Let's not let the fire go out.
Right. Macrocultures will always romanticize cultures of peoples who they have conquered. Okay, I mean, this is why you get into the problems in our own country with dealing with how the macroculture has treated indigenous peoples here. And it's the same thing happened in Britain. Basically, the Scots, the Highlanders, were the boogeyman for centuries. They were the barbarians that literally you told your kids to be scared of, or they're going to come in the night and take you away. And then when they had won, then you turn them into the romantic warrior people who now fight for queen and country and the good of the empire. So I'm a little bit on a soapbox here, and I do apologize. But like I said, I think history needs to be examined warts and all. And
Now
I'd read up on Montrose. If you think the Jacobites are cool, just go read up on somebody like Montrose first, okay?
The question, part of his question was, many, and I don't know how exactly how he phrased it. Many of the the Highlanders did not support Prince Charlie.
Correct.
What do you know a rough percentage?
I'm not going to claim to know the exact numbers. I know that there was basically 5 or 6 clans, branches of the MacDonald especially, who supported the prince, and it was sometimes it was religious, sometimes it was political, sometimes it was vendetta. Since the Campbells were supporters of the Hanoverians, some clans were just like, screw those guys, we're going to side with these guys because we freaking hate those guys. And then
Scots carrying a grudge never happened.
And sometimes it was religious. You had people who were Catholic and wanted to see a Catholic monarch, and you had, I think that was less of an issue than I think some people think it is. Economics was definitely an issue, but yeah, it was not the majority of the clans. But when I say the majority of clans, we're talking about dozens to hundreds, a large group of different peoples. Okay. I'm sure somebody in the comments is probably elaborating, but I know it was like the MacDonalds of Keppoch, I think.
The Stewarts of Appin, I know. Yeah, McFarlane's, I know.
There's like a big 5 who were the main supporters, the main ones who raised the fiery cross to follow the prince.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm thinking back to my time at Culloden Battlefield. There was a lot of different clans that were represented there. So it was.
Well, I think just like in the American Civil War, you had some clans that were where the population was divided.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, I'm loyal to my clan, but if I go with you guys, my farm's destroyed. I can't do that.
Yeah.
What about my wife and kids? You guys are nuts. This is never going to work.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than.
Then we can give it justice in a short YouTube segment. Okay.
Thank you for watching. Obviously, I got on a little bit of a soapbox there. That's what happens when I'm passionate about a topic. So Tell me in the comments, who is your favorite hero from Scottish or Irish history? I'd love to know. If there's a piece of history you want covered on this channel, a person you think we should do a biography of, tell me that, because I'm always looking for the stories that we all want to hear and remember.